It started like any other peaceful morning. The sun had just come up, casting a golden hue over the neatly trimmed lawns of our suburban neighborhood. Birds were chirping, sprinklers were ticking, and everything looked picture perfect. Until it wasn't. That's the thing about emergencies. They don't knock. They don't ask for permission. They just arrive, uninvited and unstoppable. That morning, it showed up in the form of my dad collapsing on the kitchen floor. At first, I froze. His coffee mug shattered beside him. He wasn't moving. His breathing was shallow. My heart dropped, and instinct kicked in. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. The dispatcher was calm, asking all the right questions, but my voice cracked as I answered. "Help is on the way," she said. "Hold tight. Paramedics would be there in minutes." Every second felt like an hour. I ran outside to unlock the gate and waited at the curb, scanning the road. You'd think the ambulance would just drive in, but this neighborhood, it's run by the HOA, and it has one entrance. One narrow path that curves right past the home of someone we all quietly referred to as Karen. She wasn't just any neighbor. She was a self-proclaimed enforcer of HOA rules, the type who would fine you for your grass being half an inch too long, who'd knock on your door because your trash bin was out 5 minutes early, who treated the rule book like a holy document, no exceptions. I heard the ambulance siren before I saw the lights. Relief flooded through me. But then I saw her. Karen. She had parked her golf cart. Yes, she has one, smack in the middle of the narrow street, right at the bend, right before our house. Her arms were crossed. Her stance was defiant. She wasn't moving. At first, I thought there must be some misunderstanding. No way she would block an ambulance. No way. But then I saw her mouth moving, pointing, arguing with the paramedics as they pulled up. Something about unauthorized vehicles, noise, and community disruption. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I ran up to her, yelling over the siren, "My dad is dying." I shouted, "Move your cart." She didn't flinch. Instead, she pointed at the HOA notice board nailed to the fence nearby. "This is a private road," she snapped. "No sirens, no oversized vehicles. It's in the bylaws. Breathe. Don't punch her. Just breathe." The paramedics looked at me, helpless. They couldn't ram her cart out of the way. Protocol. They needed access, and she had made sure they didn't have it. My mom was inside, crying. My sister was on the phone with relatives, panicking. And this woman was arguing about road regulations. Every second counted, and they were ticking by fast. So I did the only thing I could think of. I pulled out my phone and called someone I never imagined I'd need in this kind of situation, my best friend from college, who just happened to be a licensed pilot, a helicopter pilot. When I told him what was going on, he didn't hesitate. He didn't ask twice. "Text me the coordinates," he said. "I'm on my way." I looked around. The street was blocked. The other homes had trees and tight fences, but there was one wide, open, flat space that would make a perfect landing zone. Karen's front lawn. I know what you're thinking. Was I really about to land a rescue chopper on that woman's perfect, HOA-approved lawn? Absolutely. And if you think she was angry about an ambulance, just wait till you hear what happened when she saw what came from the sky. Karen's house was the pride of the neighborhood. Perfect green grass, trimmed like a golf course. White roses along the walkway. A no trespassing sign on the edge of her yard, just to let everyone know who was in charge. She always made sure everyone followed the rules, but the rules didn't seem to apply to her. The irony wasn't lost on me. As I stood there texting my friend the GPS coordinates, my hands were still shaking. I could hear my dad's faint groans from inside the house, and my mom yelling for me to hurry, but I had no power to move the ambulance forward, not with Karen blocking the road like she was defending a castle gate. I shouted again, "You're stopping emergency care. Do you get that?" She turned her back to me, just like that, as if I was the one being dramatic. She got back into her cart and sat down, arms folded, staring straight ahead. She wasn't budging. Not for anyone. The paramedics looked torn. They asked if there was another route. I told them no. The other end of the neighborhood was under construction. The only way in was through Karen. I stepped back and stared at her lawn. It was huge, like she had bought 2 lots just for herself. No trees, no wires overhead, just flat, green land with one big American flag planted in the center. The perfect landing spot. I could already hear the faint sound of rotor blades in the distance. The neighbors started coming out of their houses. First 1 or 2, then more. People leaned on fences, curious. A few had heard the sirens. Some asked what was going on. Others just stared at Karen, still sitting in her little cart like a queen on a throne. I told one of the paramedics to get ready. A helicopter's coming. I said. He blinked. You're serious? I nodded. A kid from down the block shouted, "No way," and ran back to grab his phone. A few others followed. And that's when Karen noticed something was off. She saw people pointing to the sky. She stood up slowly, squinting, trying to see what was coming. Then she heard it too. The thump, thump, thump of blades cutting through the air. Louder, closer, stronger by the second. She looked straight at me. "You did not call a helicopter," she said, her voice rising with every word. I didn't say anything. I just watched her face change, smug to confused, then to furious. "You can't do that," she yelled, walking toward me now. "That's a private property. That's my lawn." But it was too late. The chopper came into view. Sleek, white and red, with flashing lights. It circled once, low, just to spot the landing area. Then it hovered, kicking up dust and leaves, shaking every tree and fence around us. Karen screamed something I couldn't hear anymore. The noise was too loud. People were recording, some cheering, others just stunned. The helicopter began its descent, slow, steady, precise, right onto her perfectly trimmed lawn. Grass blew everywhere. Her roses bent sideways from the wind. Her American flag fell over. And there she was, standing in the middle of her yard, yelling at the top of her lungs, hands flailing like she could wave the chopper away. The pilot landed with skill. Smooth. No damage. Just power and grace. And the moment those skids touched the ground, the back door opened. 2 EMTs jumped out, gear in hand, running straight toward our house. Karen stood frozen, mouth open, eyes wide. She couldn't stop them. She couldn't block the sky. No rules could stop what had just happened. Not hers. Not the HOA's. And everyone in that neighborhood, every last person watching, knew one thing for sure. Whatever came next, this was a day Karen lost control. The EMTs rushed past her without saying a word. She tried to block their path for a split second, arms out, shouting something about permission and protocol. But they didn't even look at her. They had a job to do, and every second mattered. I followed right behind them, guiding them through the front door, past the living room, and into the kitchen where my dad still lay on the floor. My mom's eyes filled with tears when she saw the medics. One of them knelt down beside my dad, checking his vitals. The other began setting up equipment, a heart monitor, oxygen, the sound of Velcro straps, clicking cases, calm voices speaking in codes and numbers. They moved fast but gentle, like they'd done this 1,000 times. Outside, the helicopter blades kept spinning slowly, waiting for their return. The sound was quieter now, but the neighborhood still buzzed with energy. People stood in groups on sidewalks, whispering, pointing, recording everything on their phones. And Karen? She hadn't moved. She was still standing on her lawn, staring at the helicopter parked on her perfect grass, like it was some alien ship that had crashed into her world. She pulled out her phone and started yelling into it, probably calling the HOA, or the police, or both. I could see her pacing, her free hand fly around with every word. She was furious, but no one was listening to her anymore. Inside, the medics were ready to transport. One of them turned to me. "He's stable, but we need to move fast. Can your friend take him directly to the hospital?" I nodded. "Yes, he's ready." They strapped my dad onto a stretcher and wheeled him out. My mom clutched his hand the whole way. My sister held the door open, her face pale but steady. As we moved outside, the wind picked up again. The chopper's blade spun faster, louder, as it prepared to take off. People stepped back. Phones went up. The crowd grew quiet, as if watching something unreal. Karen ran forward, waving her arms. "You can't take off from here. This is not a landing zone. You'll destroy my lawn." But no one stopped. The medics lifted the stretcher into the helicopter. My mom climbed in after, her hair whipping in the wind. The door slammed shut. The pilot gave me a thumbs up through the window. I stepped back as the chopper lifted into the air. The sound was deafening. Grass and dirt blew everywhere again. A few lawn chairs down the street tipped over. Karen stumbled back, shielding her face from the wind. And then, just like that, it was gone, up and over the rooftops, disappearing into the sky. People clapped. Not loud, but enough to hear it. A soft ripple of applause. Karen turned to the nearest neighbor. "Did you see what just happened? That's a violation of at least 3 HOA rules. That's destruction of property. That's trespassing." But the neighbor just looked at her and said, "He saved his father's life." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. For once, she had no comeback. I stood there, still breathing hard, my ears ringing from the helicopter. My dad was on his way to the hospital. He was safe. He was alive. And Karen's perfect lawn now had deep indentations from the landing skids. The grass was flattened. Her roses were crushed. Her precious flagpole lay bent on the side. A kid across the street laughed and shouted, "Best thing I've ever seen." His mom shushed him, but even she smiled. Neighbors started to drift back to their homes. Some nodded at me in quiet approval. A few even gave me a thumbs up. Nobody was saying it out loud, but I could feel it. The mood had changed. Karen's reign of rules and fines had finally met something stronger, something real, something human. The next few hours were a blur. I drove straight to the hospital, still buzzing from everything that had just happened. My phone didn't stop buzzing either. Messages poured in, neighbors, friends, even people I barely spoke to, asking if the helicopter story was real. Some sent videos. Others just said, "Is your dad okay?" Or, "Did that really happen in our neighborhood?" When I arrived, my mom was already in the waiting room, eyes red but calmer now. She told me my dad was stable. The doctors were running more tests, but he was going to be okay. That was all I needed to hear. The stress that had been twisting in my chest finally loosened a little. I sat down beside her, both of us still shaken but deeply relieved. Meanwhile, back in the neighborhood, word spread fast. You couldn't stop it. People posted clips of the helicopter landing, videos of Karen screaming, screenshots of HOA rulebooks and sarcastic comments. Someone even started a meme, "When Karen blocks the road, take the sky." It went viral in the local community group within hours. But of course, it wasn't all laughs. Karen wasn't done. The very next morning, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find a man in a suit standing there with a clipboard. He didn't smile. He introduced himself as a representative of the HOA. He handed me a letter, a formal complaint, property damage, noise violation, improper aircraft activity, disruption of neighborhood peace. I stared at him in disbelief. "You're serious?" I asked, "After everything that happened?" He didn't answer, just said, "You have 15 days to respond," then turned and walked away. 15 days to explain why I'd saved my father's life. I went back inside, letter in hand, unsure whether to laugh or throw something. Later that day, Karen hosted an emergency HOA meeting. She sent out emails, flyers, even knocked on a few doors herself. She wanted to talk about the incident, about accountability. But this time, people didn't rush to attend. Only a handful showed up, and most of them weren't there to support her. One neighbor stood up and said, "You blocked an ambulance, Karen." She tried to interrupt, but he kept going. That man could have died, and all you cared about was a noise complaint. Another woman said, "My son recorded the whole thing. It's all over the internet now. You made us look heartless." Karen's face was tight, red. She kept trying to regain control, but the tone had changed. Her power, the fear she usually held over people, was cracking. One by one, People began to question her authority, her obsession with the rules, her complete lack of empathy. And then someone suggested a vote, not just about the incident, but about her position on the HOA board. Karen froze. She hadn't expected that, but it was already in motion. A petition began circling. Emails flew. Within 2 days, enough signatures were gathered to force a vote on her removal. It was like the whole neighborhood had been waiting for a reason. And the helicopter? That was it. That was the moment everything changed. I stayed quiet during most of this. I didn't need to say anything. The footage spoke louder than any words I could offer. Karen tried to defend herself in every way she could. She claimed the road blockage was temporary. She said she didn't know it was an emergency. She said I had violated airspace laws. But no one was buying it, because deep down, everyone knew what she did. She stopped help from arriving, and no rule book could explain that away. As the days passed, more neighbors came to check on my dad. Some brought food. Some just wanted to say they were glad he was okay. A few even apologized for not stepping in sooner. The man who delivered the HOA letter? He came back quietly a few days later to say the complaint had been reviewed and withdrawn. No apology, but that was fine. I didn't need one. I walked out to our driveway that evening and stood for a moment, just looking down the street. It was peaceful again, quiet, but something felt different. The air felt lighter. A few weeks passed. The lawn grew back, but the memory didn't fade. Not for me, and definitely not for Karen. She stopped going on her morning patrols. No more passive-aggressive emails about trash cans. No more notes taped to doors about grass height. It was like someone had unplugged her batteries. But I noticed something else, too. The neighborhood felt freer. People were talking more, walking their dogs without fear of being scolded. Kids rode their bikes wherever they wanted without getting flagged down for unauthorized sidewalk use. It was strange in the best way. One afternoon, I saw a couple trimming their hedge and blasting music from a portable speaker. A year ago, that would have gotten them a warning. Now, Karen's house had its curtains drawn. Not a word. The HOA vote came and went. The result wasn't even close. Karen was removed from her position. The community elected a new board. Regular neighbors who actually listened, who didn't weaponize the rule book, who didn't think of power as a privilege. No one celebrated out loud. There were no banners or fireworks. But people smiled more. They waved at each other. There was this unspoken feeling of relief, like a long, tight knot had finally been untangled. As for my dad, he recovered faster than any of us expected. The doctors said it was lucky he got help when he did. A delay, even just 10 more minutes, could have changed everything. He doesn't remember much from that day, which is probably a blessing. But when I told him about the helicopter and Karen's reaction, he laughed so hard he had to sit down. "It landed on our lawn," he asked between chuckles. Right in the middle. God, I wish I'd seen her face. "Me too, Dad. Me too." The pilot, my friend, stopped by a week later. I offered to help pay for fuel, or at least dinner, but he waved it off. "Saving your dad was the easy part," he said. "Getting past that woman, that was the real mission." He laughed and then added, "Next time, just say the word. I'll bring a banner that says, 'Mind your own business, Karen.'" We stood in the driveway a while, looking up at the sky. And honestly, every time I hear a helicopter now, I can't help but smile. But Karen, she's still here, still in the same house. The lawn has recovered mostly, though if you look closely, you can still see where the skids press into the grass. A faint outline like a quiet reminder. She doesn't talk to me, doesn't make eye contact when we pass. But I know she hears the whispers, the chuckles when neighbors walk past her porch, the occasional jokes dropped into community threads. She's not the queen anymore, just a woman with a lawn that once hosted a helicopter. And honestly, I don't hate her. I don't even want revenge, because in some twisted way, she brought the neighborhood together, not because of her leadership, but because of her failure to lead. We all saw what really matters. Rules didn't save my dad. People did. And no matter how many complaint letters she writes, no one will ever forget the sound of those blades overhead. Every now and then, Someone brings it up at a barbecue or during a walk. Hey, remember the helicopter day? And everyone just nods, grins, or says, unbelievable. But it happened. It was real. And it changed everything. It was sometime in early fall when I noticed something odd. Karen's yard, once the most pristine slice of suburbia, had started to look a little neglected. Not messy, just not perfect. The lines in the grass weren't as sharp. The roses hadn't been trimmed. A few brown leaves gathered near the walkway and stayed there for days. That would have never happened before. Karen used to sweep her driveway every morning, rain or shine. She had a schedule, a routine, and a habit of watching everyone else like a security camera with eyes. But now, the shutters stayed closed. The HOA files she used to carry around in her little tote bag, nowhere in sight. No more emails. No more printed warnings folded under windshield wipers. Just silence. Then, one Saturday, I saw something that truly made me pause. Karen was in her front yard, not pacing, not yelling, but sitting on a bench, just sitting there quietly, sipping from a coffee cup and staring at the sky. It was the first time I'd seen her alone and not on some mission to correct the world. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, just less inflated, and for a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. A neighbor walked by with their dog. Karen looked up, gave a tight smile, then looked away. No confrontation. No barking about leash lengths or sidewalk etiquette. Just a nod. It was surreal. Later that week, the HOA sent out their first newsletter under the new leadership. It wasn't passive-aggressive. It didn't include a list of violations under investigation. Instead, it talked about community events, like the Halloween potluck, a proposed park cleanup, and even a neighborhood movie night. People were responding, volunteering, offering their driveways for events. Someone even suggested turning part of the empty lot into a community garden. It felt like we were living in a completely different place. I was helping my mom set up chairs for the movie night when one of the newer board members came by and thanked me. He said, "We didn't realize how much control she had until it was gone." I nodded. It took a helicopter to break the spell. He laughed, then turned serious. "But really, thank you. You reminded everyone what matters." I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't do it for the neighborhood. I did it because my dad needed help, and someone decided their lawn was more important than his life. But I understood what he meant. That moment forced people to choose between rigid rules and human decency. And once they saw it, they couldn't unsee it. Even the local news picked up the story eventually. They didn't use names, but they reported it as a bold act of emergency response in the face of obstruction. They showed blurred footage of the helicopter touching down on a suburban lawn and played the audio of the dispatch call that confirmed the HOA gate was blocked. People in the comments called it heroic. Some said it was a movie moment. One person joked that it should be turned into a Netflix series. My dad, sitting in his recliner with a blanket over his legs, just shook his head and said, "I still can't believe that actually happened." He wasn't the only one. Sometimes, when I'm driving to the neighborhood at dusk, I glance over at Karen's house. The lights are usually dim. Her once busy driveway stays empty. She doesn't wave. She doesn't glare. She just exists now, quietly, like someone who finally saw themselves in a mirror and didn't like what looked back. Maybe she's thinking about what happened. Maybe not. But the market left on her lawn isn't the only thing that won't go away. Because even now, months later, when a plane flies low or a bird soars overhead, a couple of kids still shout, "The helicopter's back." And for a moment, everyone remembers. Not just the sound, not just the chaos, but the feeling, the moment everything shifted. When a neighborhood woke up, stood up, and quietly agreed, never again. One chilly morning, I stepped outside to grab the paper and noticed a small envelope on my porch. No name, no address, just a plain white envelope, tucked neatly against the doorframe. For a second, I thought it might be another complaint, some leftover piece of drama, but when I opened it, my eyebrows lifted. It was a thank you card. Inside, the handwriting was neat and sharp, the kind that looks like it belongs on a wedding invitation. The message was short. Asterisk, I don't agree with how it happened, but I understand why. I hope your father is doing well. K. Asterisk, I stood there in silence for a moment, rereading the line. It wasn't exactly an apology. It wasn't warm or emotional, but it was something. For Karen, that card might as well have been a full speech. I showed it to my mom later. She just shook her head. You broke her, she joked, half serious. I mean, you didn't do it on purpose, but you did. The funny thing was, it wasn't about breaking anyone. It was about pushing past something broken. This neighborhood, for so long, had been wound tight with invisible strings. Every little thing was controlled, judged, and people were so used to it that they didn't even notice the weight of it anymore. It took a dramatic act, something no one could ignore, to cut those strings all at once. The thing about fear is it's quiet. It doesn't shout. It whispers. Don't park there or she'll fine you. Don't let your kids play too loud. Don't forget to move your trash bins before 7 a.m. That kind of fear builds slowly until it feels normal, until one day it doesn't. After the helicopter, something shifted in people. They started pushing back in small ways. One man painted his garage door a slightly different shade of beige. Another neighbor planted sunflowers, big, bright, unapologetic sunflowers, without checking for approval. A woman down the street held yoga classes on her lawn, music and all. Karen didn't say a word about any of it. I think she knew the old rules didn't apply anymore. People sometimes ask me if I'd do it all over again, if I'd still land a helicopter on someone's yard, knowing it would turn everything upside down. And the truth is, yes. 100 times yes. Because that landing wasn't just about saving my dad. It was about waking people up, reminding them that life doesn't wait for permission slips, that emergencies don't care about newsletters or lawn regulations. We forget that sometimes. We build little bubbles around ourselves with perfectly cut grass and white fences and pretend nothing bad can happen here. But bad things happen everywhere. And when they do, all that matters is how fast you respond, who you trust, what you're willing to risk. It's easy to follow rules when everything's fine. It's when things go wrong that you find out what people really believe in. In this case, the helicopter wasn't just a machine. It was a message. We are not going to be stopped. We will take care of our own, even if it means breaking a few rules. Since then, a few other HOAs in nearby towns reached out to ask questions. Some even invited my family to speak at their meetings, not about the helicopter necessarily, but about emergency preparedness, about being human. First, the irony wasn't lost on us. Karen might have set out to enforce order, but what she ended up doing was spark a conversation none of us were brave enough to start. I don't know if she'll ever say it out loud, but I think she knows it too. The neighborhood is still quiet now, but it's a different kind of quiet. Not tense, not watched, just peaceful. People wave longer. Conversations last a little more. There's even talk of building a bench in the park, with a little plaque underneath. Someone joked it should say, asterisk, in case emergency, call 911, and if that doesn't work, call a pilot. Asterisk. We all laughed, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I couldn't help but think that might not be such a bad idea.